My name is Lisa Kaplowitz, and I am the co-founder and executive director of the Rutgers Center for Women in Business and a finance professor here at Rutgers. What we do here at the center is three things. We remove barriers, build community, and empower women with confidence and skills to succeed as leaders. In essence, we are changing the face and future of leadership. And I am so excited to welcome with me today in this incredible webinar, Strategic Job Searching, Leveraging Recruiters to Land Your Ideal Job, three amazing women who are in the biz, as we call it. And we really wanted to get a breadth of experience from different kinds of firms and different parts within the recruiting process. And so want to do some quick introductions before we jump in. Just so you know, this is getting recorded. This is going to be very interactive because the chat is going to run. We'd love for you to comment, to ask questions. We've all done these a zillion times, so we're very adept at responding real time to what's really top of mind for all of you. So first I have, and I'm just going to go the order on my screen, Nicole Reboe. She is with Talence Group. She is the firm's first president, working closely with the founder, Gina Riley. They are a mid-sized firm, really based in San Francisco and New York, specializing in bringing digital and diverse talent to cutting-edge companies. She has 20 years of experience in high-intensity corporate environments, and a versatile global executive search consultant, both with talent acquisition and firm experience. She has been with big firms and small firms, Spencer Stuart, Heidrick and Struggles. She's also been on the company side with Barclays, Visa, Brunswick Group. She has her BA from Dartmouth and her master's in college counseling from Columbia, and has a really interesting story and literally has lived all over the world in, I think, at least 3 different continents, correct?
Yeah, Lisa.
So welcome. Thank you, Nicole.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Next, I have Deepali Vyas. She is a senior client partner and global head of Fintech's payments and crypto practice, and the global leader of Implied Intelligence. And what that means to us lay folks is AI, data science, ML. She is at Korn Ferry, based in New York, and also has 20 years of C-suite executive search experience. She is also a published author, writing on topics such as digital assets, blockchain, crypto, innovation, digital transformation in Bloomberg, Fundfire, CNBC, Business Insider, and Forbes. Prior to this, she's run a boutique consulting executive search firm, and she has her BS in finance from Colorado, is a board member of Correlation One, and is also part of the Rutgers University Big Data program. So thank you for being here. And last but not least, I have Gina Riley. She is an HR professional and creator of the Career Velocity system, really focusing on the intersection of HR, executive search, and career coaching. She has her master's degree in whole system designs and is a certified behavioral interview skills trainer and UMAP coach. She's an executive search consultant affiliated with Talence Group and part of the Forbes Coaches Council contributor. So we are so excited to have you all here. Thank you. Want to start out with getting a pulse on who's in our audience. So I want to share my screen again and ask you all to take out your phones, which I don't like my students doing in class. But in this case, I do want you to do, because we're going to do a couple interactive polls. So with that, I'm going to ask our first poll. What level are you in your career? Early career, mid-career, more at the senior or executive level? Give you a couple minutes to populate this. It looks like most of our folks are mid-career, which makes sense, because a lot of what we're doing at the Center for Women in Business is really targeting that stage of your career, which happens to correspond with the stage of your life when everything is really overlapping. You're trying to scale up your career. You might be taking care of little people. You might be taking care of parents and older people. And really, it's that messy middle where we're trying to figure everything out, where we have a lot of challenges, but also an incredible amount of opportunities. And so it looks like about 60% of our folks are mid-career. I also gave this to my students. So we might have some undergrads joining us in. Thank you for joining us, and promise that everybody is going to be able to get some insights, even those that are more established and executive in their career. So that gives all of our panelists some good insight. Also want to know, have you all worked with recruiters in your career? Executive search consultants, headhunters? We'll explain what all of this really is. And so it looks like we have a pretty good mix of half and half of folks that have and have not worked with recruiters. Great. Last question. These are my favorite. I love these word clouds. When the word comes to mind, what word comes to mind? Only one word when you think of recruiter. Good job writing the slash in there too. People, culture, coach, helper, connector. I love that these are all positive. Great. And I know our recruiters on the call like that as well. Headhunter, helpful, network. I have personally used recruiters multiple times throughout my career to get the next opportunity. And so think that there is a ton of value in them. Love how these word clouds generate. I'm seeing network, I'm seeing headhunter, I'm seeing connector, I'm seeing change, I'm seeing helper. We're going to find out how really recruiters are going to expand your network, how they're going to help you find this opportunity that really is best, not only for you, but is going to add value to the new company that you work in as well. So I'm going to stop sharing there. Hopefully, Gina and Nicole, Deepali, that gives us some insight to get started. Deepali, I want to turn it over to you first. Can you talk to our audience to ground us? What are the different types of recruiters, and how and when do you use them? Can you talk about the big firm experience first?
Sure. For the folks in the audience, large, I would say public and private executive search firms exist to help clients connect with the right talent. And we are, oftentimes people think, oh, if I'm working with a recruiter, do I have to pay them? Like, how does all of that work? So retained search firms are retained by employers. So if you think about, let's say, Fortune 500, they will come to us and say, we need to hire in these roles and at these levels. We as recruiters will go out to the market and approach candidates and tell them about the job and interview them and vet them and see whether or not it is a good match. So that's how we work in terms of the retained environment. Now, there is a level of recruiters that work on a contingency basis. And the big difference here is that the retained search firm is exclusively working on that role. So for example, if I'm working on a VP level data science search with a specific client, that client is only relying on my firm to go out to market and seek out the right talent for filling that position, right? And they're obviously paying us to do so. Contingent recruiters will work on many opportunities, but they're not exclusive to that opportunity. So there's a bit of competition, but they will also go out into the market and tell candidates about the jobs that they're working on and put them into the process. So either way, you're working with a recruiter from the candidate side, but you have to understand whether or not that particular role is exclusive to that recruiter or it's not. And so there's a little bit of a difference and sort of that competitive game that you might be playing. And then there are internal recruiters. So for every corporation, there are internal recruitment teams that when you're applying on their website or maybe applying on LinkedIn, the first sort of line of defense within the company is the internal recruiter. They'll screen your resume, and if you're a match, they'll reach out to you and put you into the process.
Awesome, thank you. That was really helpful, I think, to understand the differences between the different models that recruiters use, especially at some of the bigger firms. Nicole, can you talk to us? And you've worked in-house, you've worked at big firms, and now you're at Rich Talent, which is more of a boutique firm. Can you tell us the difference in a boutique versus maybe a larger executive search firm like a Korn Ferry or a Heidrick or a Spencer Stuart?
Yeah, Lisa, happy to. And Deepali, thank you for laying out, the sort of the mechanics behind, which firms get used when. And I think that's an important distinction to remember. I just can't make up my mind as to which environment I like the most. So hopefully my sort of lack of decision making will be helpful here in sharing a bit of insight about the ecosystem. I think it's important to remember that in the US alone, there are over 5,000 executive search firms. So it's a huge marketplace. And Deepali was talking about the larger retained firms, which have international presence. They'll often be operating in the Americas and Asia and Europe. And then you have a whole nother layer in this happy soup of 5,000 of boutiques, of which I'm in one. And this can range from mid-market firms with hundreds of people to 1 or 2 women bands who are boutique firms. And all of them are really worthy. I think it's about you figuring out which ecosystem is right for you. So it's lovely to see comments in the chat about I'm trying to find a marketing firm that handles marketing positions. And sort of the beauty of the boutique experience is that you have a lot of independently founded firms by folks who might have been in the larger firms who've gone off and said, I want to hang out my own shingle. And what you'll find in these boutiques is sometimes they do indeed specialize by function. You might have a previous partner who said, I just want to do CFOs all day, and I'm going to set up a boutique firm that does just that. You might have a firm like Rich Talent, which is more of a generalist firm. We handle all go-to-market roles, C-level roles, and board roles. So you really have to look around and be mindful of what you're seeing on their websites, take a look at the leadership, start to understand where their areas of specialization are, which I think is, incredibly important. But I do love what I saw in the word cloud, Lisa, that this sort of connector or helper. I think that's super important to understand that you'll have relationships with individual recruiters and then with the firms. So, don't feel discouraged by the landscape being like lots of firms. Try and find people that you resonate with, and then, you can stick with them throughout their careers and yours. So I hope that helps. It's a big landscape, Lisa.
If there's one sort of, piece of advice in what Nicole said was, for everybody out there that thinks that I should only work with one recruiter, my biggest advice is you should have a portfolio of recruiters, right? And a portfolio of different recruiters that some may be generalists, some may be in your function, some may be just, sort of giving you an idea of what the market is looking like. Build relationships with different types of recruiters. You may have a friend at an executive search, you may have a friend at a boutique, but the more relationships that you build with us, we'll keep that in mind as we think about opportunities. And by the way, recruiters network with one another. So if I can't help you, or if I'm not working with a specific client, I'm going to lob that over to Gina and Nicole, and maybe they're working with a client or an industry that you're particularly interested in. So don't be afraid to work with multiple recruiters. In fact, you owe it to yourself to do so.
That is a great point. And folks, I'm looking at the chat and I'm writing all these questions down. And so we're going to get to a lot of them about, industry specific, sector specific. How do you find a recruiter? We are going to get there. We just want to lay out for those of you, because it sounded like about half the folks haven't worked with recruiters. So we just want you to understand how it all works before we start addressing some of these specifics. So be patient. I am looking at it, and we will definitely get to it. Gina, can you talk to us a little bit about the independent in-house recruiters and what they do?
In-house, like corporate or for on the company side, just to clarify?
Yeah, and independent. Talk about what you do. Talk about what you do.
Okay. So kind of back to what Deepali was saying, you've got the 3 general models. You've got the corporate in-house or company in-house talent acquisition. And then more to like what Nicole was sort of talking about is there's boutique firms and the large firms. For me, I'm affiliated with Talence Group, and we're a boutique firm that specializes in leadership level roles. So it's not one specific industry. It's going to be helping those client companies that we contract with in finding and assessing the right skill match for them, the behavioral skills, the leadership skills, and then the functional expertise that they specifically need. And I think one thing that is important for people to know is when it comes to executive search and retained search, that the recruiting company is being paid by that client. So candidates don't pay the recruiters to find them a job. They become part of that search process. And when they enter that ecosystem, the relationship with the recruiter gets developed over the time of, all the interview process. The recruiter is managing that interview process. They're managing the interface with the client company, and they're really an advocate for you as you go through that process. Does it mean they're advocating for you to be the finalist? Not necessarily. They're trying to understand your skill set so that they can best represent you. So the better you show up as a candidate, completely ready to talk about your unique value proposition, the problems that you solve, and being very succinct and direct about what you can do to help, that is the best way you can help your recruiter. And then the other thing I would say is language matters in these kinds of discussions. Candidates aren't using recruiters. To Deepali's point, you're building relationships with recruiters. And a recruiter at any given one time are working on a number of jobs. And that's their focus because that's how they're getting paid. Candidates are not paying them. They're getting paid by a client company to go to market right now, and they have time sensitivity. So if you're networking with them at a point that they're not quite looking for something that you're trying to target, it's not always the best time to get a lot of their time. It's more important to just have consistent touch points and reminding them that you exist in the ecosystem, that you're looking, and also to be a connector into your network where it's appropriate and possible.
I think that's so important. And there are a couple things that you all have said that I want to highlight and make sure. This is like one of those things I'd say in my classroom. Okay, is everyone looking at me? This is really important. You, the candidate, do not pay the recruiter. You do not pay the headhunter. You do not pay the executive search firm. If somebody is coming to you and say, pay me $1,000 to do blah, 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 they are not a recruiter. There is a place for that as a coach, as a resume writer, as an interview prepper, but they are not a recruiter. So just beware, buyer beware on that one. The other thing, I've seen a zillion of these. So I think we're just going to jump to how do we find recruiters. And one thing I will say that Deepali, I think you said, is you don't necessarily have to have one recruiter. So when I transitioned from investment banking into the company side, I had relationships with 50 different recruiters. I had relationships with 50 different recruiters, and I found them, this is a long time ago, so the internet wasn't nearly as robust. What I would do is I would look through some of these job listings, and I noticed that the same recruiters kept coming up for the jobs that I wanted. I was a finance professional, I was a CFO. And so I looked at those, and so wanted to see, one, how do you get recruiters to notice you? And then one piece of advice I'm going to give to folks, anytime a recruiter calls, even if it's a job you're not interested in, you take that call and you talk to them.
Yeah.
Because one, you might have somebody that would be a better fit for the job, and then you've shared information, you've helped them, and then they now have you in the database for when something is more relevant. And you can always tell them, hey, that's not relevant for me, but here's what I'm really interested in. And then the database grows. So, Deepali, how do you find recruiters, I guess? How do you start, and how do you get them to notice you?
Yeah, a couple of pieces of advice here. And so when we talk about, we are your talent agent, but we don't act like a sports agent. So when you're not paying us to get you in the door, like Gina said, we're trying to prep you as much as possible to match you to what our client wants. And it's your job to kind of, make the most of that interview process. But how do you find us, right? Finding recruiters, first of all, finding a job is a full-time job. Let's just be honest. But finding recruiters, you need to seek out, okay, is this the industry that I want to be in? Based on that, you start looking at firms that specialize in that particular industry. Or you start looking through your own network. who in my network is connected to a recruiter that I can get to. Now, I'm going to tell you my biggest pet peeve, because I have, a nice amount of LinkedIn following. I probably get at least 200 messages a day on LinkedIn, right? At minimum. And so think about my position in terms of, and I'm not saying that like from a bragging standpoint, it's just, I really do want to help people, right? We are all here to help people. I think the people that stand out to me is, I always tell people, help me help you. That means if you're coming to
Great
me.
movie, by the way. Jerry
Exactly.
Maguire.
So don't come into my inbox and say, hey, can I grab coffee with you? I have no idea who you are. I have no idea what you want. Are you a client? Are you a candidate? Like what, like, help me help you. And so my point is, you come in and you say, hey, I was on the Rutgers, Center for Women in Business panel, or I listened to you. I took all the tips. Here's my resume. Here are the 3 things that are great about me. And these are the industries that I want to work in. If I can't help you, at least I can forward your information to somebody else. I don't have to construct this whole message about you, because guess what? That takes me a lot of time. So that's where it's the help me help you. If it's as quick as me being able to forward you to a couple of people that could potentially help you, if I can't, you're making my life easier, but you're allowing me to help you.
I think that is great advice. Nicole.
I love what you were saying, Deepali, and it just took me back to starting my career in executive search, not really knowing anything about this as an industry. And it can be intimidating when you're trying to, as you said, navigate a full-time job to find a job, and then also looking at how complex the landscape is. So I would really encourage people to be bold. We are just people. Don't be afraid to put yourself forward. And I think Deepali's advice of trying to, in any relationship, whether it's a date or a recruiter, find some common ground, find some connective tissue, find something that, moves beyond the transactional. We all know people we like to engage with, and we all know the people that come our way and we say, oh my God, it's going to be a one-way street. Try and make it a two-way street, with the understanding that there is a lot of empathy there. We know it is not easy to navigate a career. It's, not easy to reach out to someone that you might not know, because you're trying to be proactive. So I think all of taking the time to get to know Lisa, Gina, Deepali, we're all about advancing and empowering people, and that, we'll be more receptive than not, because we know what it's like to be in that position of maybe not being seen, or not being quite visible, or not being at that point where, everyone's reaching out to you. And trust me, that will change. There will be a tipping point in your career where you'll get more inbound calls than you might do the outbound outreach, but don't be discouraged. Keep pressing forward and keep trying to find, as Deepali said, some relevant contacts or links, so that a recruiter might pick up their head and start to form a relationship with you.
And ladies, thick skin. Everything is a numbers game. Don't take it so personally. I see in the chat, recruiters ghosted me. It's okay. It doesn't matter. You keep doing what you're doing and keep plugging away, because guess what? It's a numbers game for us too. We have to call hundreds of candidates to get the right person. You have to call hundreds of people on your side to match or connect with the right person to help you. So, just have some thick skin, because you are always going to be selling yourself, and sales is about thick skin. It's okay to get the rejections. It's okay for all of that. And like Nicole said, it's a great point. There will be a tipping point. We will be chasing you after a certain point. You won't have to chase us.
Right.
And that'll be a wonderful place where you are in your career. So.
And that goes for the men who listening on this call
yes,
as well.
It's men too. Sorry.
No. It's the same thing. And I think I had a boss once who told me, when I was working with the CEO, because I had to keep going back, no is just the beginning of yes. I tell that to folks all the time, except sexual harassment and assault. That no means just no. But aside from that, no is just the beginning of yes. So you have to face a lot of rejection. You only need one incredible next opportunity. Gina, I know you wanted to comment on this as well.
Absolutely. Well, you started this section with how do you get found? A lot of people in our audience today are probably thinking, okay, great. I can't hire a recruiter. I need to build relationships with recruiters, but also how do I attract recruiters to me? The first thing I recommend is first go to your LinkedIn profile when we get off here and go to your settings and privacy, set aside like a half hour to an hour and go through all the settings and privacy and make sure you're signaling behind the scenes to recruiters that you're ready to engage. There's ways to do that. That is a whole nother topic, but go check that. Make sure your profile picture is showing to all 3 degrees of your network. I just had someone on the chat send me a connection request and the photo isn't showing to even 1st degree. So that's really tough for a recruiter to knock on the door, but they don't, it's like you have a bag over your head. Start at the top of your profile and make sure that your headline is maximized. You have 122 characters. Make sure that in those 122 characters, you have words and phrases that tie directly to your functional and industry expertise. Why? Because the recruiters here on the line, they're putting those things in the search engine to populate you into their searches for the jobs they're working on right now. And then after you take care of your headline, jump down to the skills section and make sure your skills are represented. The skills that they are looking for are also in drop-down menus behind the scene, on LinkedIn Recruiter. Then make sure your experience section is well-rounded and it explains what you do. And then write an about summary, first-person narrative. You have 2,600 characters, including spaces, to tell the recruiters, your ideal stakeholders who will make that decision on hiring you. You can tell them your story right there.
That's where you own your narrative, right? Like and that's the other thing. If we have to work to understand what you did or what you want to do, you're not going to get picked up as easily, right? So let's say you were a technologist your whole career, but now you want to pivot to marketing and you went to this awesome school and this is what you want to do. That summary section allows you to say, I'd like to use my technical expertise and parlay that into a marketing or MarTech role. And I felt that my recent academic, focus was to do this. And I feel I would bring a lot to the table, having that technical mindset, but allowing me for creativity or something like that, right? But like if I actually knew that, and I have a MarTech role, I'm going to go for a person that has been technical, that had some schooling in marketing, and now I'm going to put them in this MarTech role and give them a chance, right? So think about, like, again, the help me help you, right? Fill out as much as possible and own your narrative, because guess what? Someone else will own it for you if you don't tell me your story. Someone is going to say, you know what? I think they're just a technologist. Yeah, they got their MBA or whatever, but I want to put them in a technology role, and we'll never know your story. We'll never know your interest.
Very, very astute. A couple things. Nubia commented that make sure your brand is consistent across all social media platforms. That is really, really huge. Just like when you're young and you're applying to college, people are looking at that. So nobody, as I tell my students, doesn't matter how amazing looking you think you are, nobody wants to see you half naked holding a beer or smoking a bong. Like, doesn't need to happen. Additionally, we have a LinkedIn webinar that was absolutely amazing. So if you go to our website, Viviana can put it in there. We have a recording of what that was. Gina, amazing tips. And we have a lot more in there as well. Somebody also asked the question of being out with, they put like open to work. I wouldn't necessarily put your open to work on there, but you can put it more subtly on LinkedIn as well. And I know, Gina, you had posted in the chat as well that there are certain keywords. Somebody told me once personally that I should be shortening my bio on LinkedIn, and it basically is my resume, and I haven't touched it in a long time, which I probably should. But I still get calls for recruiters about CFO positions, and I haven't been a CFO in 10 years. So something, one of the other questions that was asked in here to all of you in the chat is, when you are engaged in a search, are those positions published? Are they unpublished? And are you using some sort of AI filter to look through the initial outreach, or are you going through your own databases of contacts?
Well,
Nicole, you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's back to the top of the call, where you have a complex landscape of how clients are working with executive search and recruiters. So Deepali talked about retained search, where the client is paying for the relationship, and Gina alluded to that too. You have contingent firms who are, as I said, there's a bit more competition, and it's a pay to play. They get paid when the placement is made. So it's kind of good to figure out kind of who you're sort of dealing with in terms of each position. But I think it's just super important to remember that LinkedIn, headhunters, executive search, it's got to be a landscape approach to finding a new role. And I think the importance of brand starts with yourself. Be on brand for yourself, and then all of these other channels will fall into place. And I really want to encourage people to have a platform approach. Make sure you're working your own network. Make sure your own, network understands that you're at this inflection point and you're no longer interested in MarTech, as Deepali says. It has to be like a multi-pronged approach, or it really won't work. Over-reliance on LinkedIn, whether candidates and or recruiters, is not a great thing, right? It's very limiting. Using your own network is super important. And again, all of this is trying to tap into being bold, having a good sense of yourself, where you want to go, and then the ability to share that with different audiences, because that, quite frankly, the market that we had last year in executive search, where lots of clients were unwilling to pay the extra fees to find people, means that as a candidate, you have to be proactive and activate yourself in a way that maybe it's LinkedIn, maybe it's Deepali, maybe it's me, maybe it's Gina, maybe it's Lisa, who says, look, I heard one of my students works at X firm and they're looking for Y. It's super important that, you're sharing your narrative across lots and lots of different places and lots of different platforms, especially in this market, to be able to really yield results.
Let me take a small ball here. So, like super tactical. Retained searches won't be published anywhere. They're going to approach you, and then they're going to send you the job specification at the senior levels, right? Because they're going to be confidential. There's going to be some things like that. Our firm does not publish jobs of our clients, period, full stop. You're never going to see them. We will be approaching you directly. Contingent agencies may post their positions on LinkedIn and their sites and things like that. And so you may be able to connect the dots, like, oh, they're recruiting for this bank in this position, so on and so forth. So they may be published, they may not be, it depends. And then obviously firms themselves will have their roles on the website and on LinkedIn. What you need to think about in terms of AI, there's a little bit of bias built into AI, since that's been my space for a while. But yes, if your keywords do not match up, the internal recruiters, because per job on LinkedIn, there's a minimum of 253 applicants on average. Okay, so they are using AI. So if just the words don't match, or your resume doesn't match that job specification, you're done. You're done. And so really be careful. And again, please do not be afraid to have multiple versions of your resume. Like, people get really stuck on the fact, like, this is my resume, right? It's okay. Like, you're a technologist, have a techie driven resume to apply for the techie role. You want to have a little bit more, generalist, or you want to go into consulting, you can have a broader, sort of more generic resume. So think about that for a minute. The other thing I would say is on LinkedIn, right? If you see a job that's posted, oftentimes, firms want to save money by not paying the recruiter. And so they're trying to network. So that's a small ball here. If you notice that a recruiter's posted it, but you might have like a connection to that hiring manager, I would just get into their inbox and say, hey, I saw the job posted. Here's what I bring to the table. I'm really interested in the company. I love the culture. I've been following you for a while. Guarantee that hiring manager is going to say, you know what, I'm going to quote recruit this person directly, and they won't have to pay that contingent recruiter, or you won't have to go through the recruiter. So again, understand what you're getting into, but oftentimes there are companies that may not be hiring, but you're just so super interested in them. Email them saying, hey, I put out this thought leadership piece. I think you're going to be interested. I've been following your company. Please let me know when something opens up. Trust me, they will keep you in mind for that proactivity.
Yeah, I also want to say real quickly, and then Gina, different recruiters focus on different levels of talent as well. So Deepali and Nicole, I think to an extent, right? You're focused on more of the senior level.
Yes.
So if you are, looking for an internship, these are probably not the right folks. But I can definitely tell you who those companies are to do that, especially in finance. You have like a Foster McKay, and there's a website you can go on, and they're those types of firms that specialize in junior talent. Then there are other firms that specialize in more of a mid-career talent lens. And so a lot of times, you know, firms like Korn Ferry didn't reach out to me until I finally had a C in my title. And then all of a sudden I started getting bombarded, which is awesome.
And I will plug Korn Ferry for just a quick second, in that obviously we're known for executive search, but we have professional search and KF Advanced. So for early and mid-career, we've acquired a lot of boutique firms. So now we are up and down the vertical. So if you're early stage, if you're mid stage, we are very big. We cover a lot. We are the biggest out there. So again, if you go onto Korn Ferry's website, if you're more junior, go into KF Advanced, so on and so forth. But we do have that vertical. It's just my team and my group will be covering more of that C-suite board level.
Great. Thank you.
Gina, did you want to?
Yeah, just a quick one. So when it in the past couple of years, I've run a couple of CEO searches for nonprofits, so pretty large organizations. And with Talence Group, we do put those out in the market. We don't always, so you'll see it on LinkedIn, you'll see us blast it out, it may be on our website. So sometimes those roles are visible, but we may not actually put the company or client name on there. That might be confidential until we get you on the phone, and then we share that. And there's so many reasons why we do or we don't do it. And I don't know if that's super important for this conversation, but you are able to see an array of opportunities. But there are plenty of very senior level roles that are, confidential. You've got the executive search consultant in the market trying to find the right kind of matches, pulling them into the interview processes and whatnot. The best thing that you can do if you're at the super executive levels is you've got to be networking and building relationships, not just with recruiters. That's a smaller percentage of your time. I can't emphasize enough that most of your time should be connecting with your first degree connections and getting introductions to second degree connections. And there's actually social science behind dormant ties. There's a book by David Burkus. It's called Friend of a Friend. And he has a study in there that many studies that he talks about in all the chapters. But it's when you reawaken dormant ties, people that you haven't talked to since college or even high school, those people have built lives that you are not a part of. You're not a part of those social circles. So they have a network that you don't have access to, but only through them. So they're the most likely to want to have a conversation and rekindle your relationship without it being a cold call. So just keep that in mind that, 85% of your time is actually going into your network, asking for introductions and asking what recruiters and who do you know? Build your list from your network.
Gina, that's a great point. And like the dormant ties piece, like that network, to reawaken that, you build sort of instant credibility, because a friend of a friend, if someone says a friend of a friend, you already have 25-50% instant credibility because somebody knows you, and then you keep going. I have just for example, in real time, I have an ed tech startup that I've tried to do on my free time. And I went back to my high school network, and it turned out that my high school network in Denver, this woman is like the head of like Denver public schools, like superintendent. And we went to high school together. So I knocked on her door and I said, you need to get my ed tech in Denver public school systems. And here we are. And I haven't talked to her in 24 years.
And I have tons of those stories as well. LinkedIn is an incredible tool to reconnect on those relationships. Nicole, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think what everyone is hearing, so it should sound like familiar rules of the road for building relationships over time that matter. It's no different. It's multiple, it's complicated, it's over time, and it requires, effort and energy. And I don't think any rules are different in executive search or recruiting, that you want to have meaningful relationships where you're not transacting. You're bringing something to the person and they're bringing something back to you. And those are some of the most successful relationships with recruiters that you can build. So no different than friends, families. Treat us the same way. Relationships over time of substance that are meaningful for both parties. is what will garner success.
And
I have
Lisa,
another tip.
what other, sorry, go ahead,
I have
Gina.
a tip on helping recruiters within your network. One tip or trick that you can use is when you talk to a recruiter and a job is not suitable for you, but you have 1 or 2 people in mind, ask them if it's okay if you go and you talk to your network and then make an introduction. That way you're not giving up your friends' names without them knowing, right? You get to have a conversation with your friends, which makes them excited that you thought of them and builds a tighter relationship because now they feel like, you thought of me. And then when you make the relationship, the recruiter remembers you even better.
Mhm.
It's a win-win-win.
Totally. I was going to go back to Nicole's point earlier on the brand comment. For those of you in your mid-career that might be, and I get this all the time, like I'm not too comfortable sharing things on my LinkedIn feed and things like that. This is all part of your narrative building. If you have good thought leadership, and there's a lot of noise on LinkedIn. Okay, I'm not endorsing any of that, but like if you're in the job market, you happen to put together some thought piece or there's an article that you're sharing, trust me, like people are looking at you when they want to look at you. So when they look at your feed, they're going to say, wow, this person's really thoughtful. They're really invested in this. They really like this particular area. It really builds on the resume that you already have on LinkedIn based on your posts. Like, you may be really interested in the ed space. Well, have you posted anything about education on your LinkedIn feed? Does it make it known that you're passionate in that area? And so those are things that will help you, and don't be terrified of posting something on LinkedIn. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of noise, so be thoughtful, but do it in a really super strategic way.
I also want to talk about, and I know, I think all 3 of you, and specifically Deepali and Nicole, you all have spent a lot of time discovering hidden talent in spaces that might not have been originally targeted. And we know from research that our networks tend to be filled with folks that look like us. So can you talk about how recruiters in your roles are ensuring that we're casting a wide net? We have a really diverse community here at the Center for Women in Business that includes men and includes, all experiences and functions and industries. But can you talk about how you're ensuring that you're targeting diverse slates and diverse experiences from all around?
Lisa, I love this, and I love that Rutgers has such a diverse and embracing and inclusive approach to building your business school. And I think for me, the reason I got into executive search was to disrupt. I sort of started to understand that this is a huge kind of conduit to some of the most interesting roles in the world. And I thought, wow, it would be great to widen the aperture. It would be great to not make this an exclusive experience that feels like something that is not accessible. And I now sort of feel like I'm able to sort of culminate all of this at Rich Talent Group, where, we're pretty famous for our reach in DEI, which is more makes more. You have wider candidate pools when they're diverse, when they're cognitively diverse, they're experientially diverse. So we're really proud of our track record of, 100% of our board placements add diversity, 90% of our operating roles add diversity. And part of that has been, for me, certainly as a woman of color, being able to, Lisa, to your point, go into talent pools that have previously been ignored for whatever reason. And it's part of my mission to stop that, pivot, and just do something else where the aperture is much wider and our clients actually benefit from seeing the whole constellation of candidates versus one slice. And our candidates benefit because they get access to opportunities that might have, passed them by for whatever reason. So I think it's incredibly important for me personally. And I think, also for Lisa, what you're building at Rutgers, that we talk about this and be real about what it feels like to be, perhaps marginalized talent for whatever reason.
Thank you. Deepali, I know you as well have worked a lot, especially with women in tech and finance, because there are very few of us. And do you want to add anything to what Nicole said about how to ensure that we are casting the widest net? And I want folks to also realize it's not an either or. Like, the table stakes is that you have the chops and you have the skills to do the job. We just want to see different perspectives of how we're going to approach problems. And ensuring that everybody has access to these opportunities.
Yeah, and we're living in a great time where that diversity is being recognized and sought after. So I think we're living in a great time, particularly how, these schools and organizations are being built. So as Nicole said, to echo that sentiment, we want to democratize access, and that is our mission. And every role that we approach, we absolutely require from our standpoint a diverse slate. My advice to people, putting yourself into organizations or initiatives or anything like that, like women in STEM or women in finance, or some of those groups that we as recruiters will go into to look at talent or to approach talent. You're now part of our ecosystem or our network. So I think about WIDS at Stanford. I think they have conferences at Stanford, but it's in data science and so on and so forth. So women networks, person of color networks, there's Posse, there's all kind, Twigo, etc. So there's a lot of networks that you should attach yourself to, because chances are recruiters are going into those networks specifically to assess and approach diverse talent that they absolutely want to be a part of. And, look for people like, myself, Nicole, and Gina. Here are women advocating for women, right? So when you're looking at, the recruiting firms, go and look after those women. Like, that person looks like me. I want to get to know that person. And then chances are they're advocating for you as well. So, it's a very, doing a little bit of diligence on your part and connecting yourselves to organizations like that. You're doing yourself, a great favor.
Absolutely. Gina, anything you want to add that we missed?
Well, I'm putting my, putting my LinkedIn profile in there if people want to reach out and connect. I see in the chat a little bit of some questions about changing from like profit to not, going profit, corporate to a nonprofit, et cetera. And in my experience working with people making career transitions, because that's primarily what I do now is career coaching, it's a really, really difficult chasm to cross. You oftentimes come off as the non-obvious choice just based on that piece of paper, the resume, and your LinkedIn profile. And again, I'm going to harken back to the other comments we made about networking and relationship building. If you're in a position where you're like, I've been in corporate for 20 years and I'm ready to do my give back and I want to go and seek out a nonprofit role, well, I can tell you from running 2 CEO searches and working with boards, they need a lot more than I'm ready to do it. There's a lot of bias that you have to overcome to make that change. You can't just arrive and say, I'm here and I'm ready to lead your organization. So you need to be thoughtful, strategic, deliberate. You need to build relationships, and you need to plan to make that kind of a change over the course of a couple of years. It doesn't happen overnight.
And we also did a couple webinars on this as well. We're busier than I even remember we were on career transitioning and pivoting. So that same link that Viviana put in, and Viviana, if you can repost it again, lots of on-demand webinars that talk to a lot of this stuff. I've been fortunate enough that I have pivoted, I think 5 times in my career. So I've done more than a full turn if we're talking quarter turns. And really don't put so much pressure on yourself. Each experience builds on the next. The one point I will say about pivots is it has to be a pivot. It can't be a full 180. And so think about either the skills that you have or the industry experience you have, and you can pivot to a different function, but it probably needs to be in the same industry. You can pivot to a different industry, but it probably needs to be in the same function. And that's how I have worked with recruiters in the past very successfully in order to make those transitions. And again, it's not one recruiter, right? So unlike when you're in a personal relationship, you should probably have one partner. With recruiters, you can have many, and it is socially and emotionally acceptable for all parties. Yes?
You treat all of them well, though. So that's the bar.
Yes.
That's the finish.
Yes. We are basically out of time. We didn't even get to all of our questions, but hopefully in doing so, we were able to get to a lot more of our audience questions. Want to leave it to each of you. Last words of wisdom, parting advice. Gina, I'm going to start with you.
Oh my goodness. I would say you own your own career and make the most of your relationships. And if you have left your relationships to kind of squander. There's no time like the present to start building that list of people that you want to reconnect with and kindle those relationships, and think about what it is that you want next for your target, so you have something to go off of.
Awesome. Thank you. Nicole.
Challenge us and challenge yourselves. No one knows you better than you do, right? So always remember that you do have power in this experience. You are empowered in this experience, and, push back on us, and hopefully, we'll be able to get to know you all better too.
Awesome. Deepali.
I was just going to say, a bit more tactical, consider creating your own personal board of directors. So think about like the 5 people that are going to, 1, you need a cheerleader. 2, you need someone to critique you. 3, you need your super connector friend. 4, you need to figure out someone that's in your past or a past colleague or a past manager. And then, 5, a reach sort of mentor, right? Like, just keep hounding them and say that, look, I don't need you to have a formal mentoring relationship, but I want an informal mentoring relationship with you. And can I ask you some questions from time to time? So find your personal board of directors. And again, that allows you to network even further when you have these types of folks, right? Your cheerleader can be like, oh my God, I ran into somebody at this place and blah, blah, blah. And like, go with it. So think about it from that perspective.
I love that. A good friend of mine, Heidi Zach, who ended up founding with her husband, Third Love, a bra company. I came across this board of directors because she wrote an article and I was the cheerleader.
Awesome. I can believe
love
that.
So I have that. And then as I look through my own personal life, I think I have cultivated that, and it's so important and it's so reassuring. I think the one thing is, everybody celebrate your successes. We don't do it enough. Make a list of those thank yous. Then when you have your stories for your next job and you are talking to the recruiters, some of your accomplishments, because it's hard for us to recall. I cannot thank you all enough. I learned a lot from this, which selfishly is always something I love to do. And so Deepali, Nicole, Gina, really appreciate all the insight that you gave us. And for those living in, in the tri-state area and other snowy areas, stay safe, drive carefully. We could not do what we're doing without the support of our corporate partners. So just want to shout out to all of them. The Center for Women in Business is totally self-funded. So we only exist with the generosity of individuals and corporations. Have a wonderful, fabulous weekend. Stay safe, be warm. Thank you, everybody.